BYEL 113, your best buddy station in the session. Hello and welcome to this radio station DYEL 113. This is your best buddy on air, Mimi View. Time check, it's 9 o'clock in the evening, January 17, 2021. The following program is brought to you by...
Oh no! Little Timmy's got hold of a marker pen. My wall looks like a coloring book. What am I going to do? Clarina! Cleans up the impossible. Now he's really made a mess. It's a pain but we won't stress. In the hole he has drawn overall on the wall lots of scrolls. But we can clean this up. Clarina! Cleans up the impossible.
And for tonight's radio drama, this is a short story from Paz and Benitez entitled Dead Stars. So folks, sit back, enjoy, and listen to tonight's great story. What if you found yourself getting married soon, but suddenly you have formed feelings for another person? What would it cost? What would you do? How would it change your life? Through the open window, the air-steeped outdoors passed into Alfredo's room, quietly enveloping him, stealing into his very thought. Esperanza, Julia, the sorry mess he had made of life, the years to come even now beginning to weigh down, diffused into formless melancholy. The murmur of conversation from the azotea where his parents, Don Julian and Carmen, were busy puttering away among the rose pots.
Papa, and when will the long table be set?
I don't know yet. Alfredo is not very specific, but I understand. Speranza wants it to be next month.
Why is he not a bit more decided? I wonder. He is over 30, is he not? And still a bachelor. Esperanza must be tired waiting.
She does not seem to be in much of a hurry either.
How can a woman be in a hurry when the man does not hurry her? Papa, do you remember how much in love he was?
In love? With whom?
With Esperanza, of course. He has not had another love affair that I know of. What I mean is that at the beginning, he was enthusiastic. Flowers, serenades, notes, and things like that.
Alfredo remembered that period with a wonder not unmixed with shame. That was less than 4 years ago. He could not understand those months of a great hunger that was not of the body, nor yet of the mind. A craving that had seized on him one quiet night. Was he being cheated by life? Love. He seemed to have missed it. Or was the love that others told about a mere fabrication of imagination? Was love a combination of circumstances? In those days, love was, for him, still the eternal puzzle. For love, as he knew it, was a stranger to love as he divined it might be. Sitting quietly in his room now, he could almost revive the restlessness of those days, the feeling of haste, such as he knew so well in his boyhood when something beautiful was going on somewhere, and he was trying to get there in time to see. "Hurry, hurry, or you will miss it," someone had seemed to urge in his ears. So he seized on the shadow of love and deluded himself for a long while in the way of humanity from time immemorial. In the meantime, he became very much engaged to Esperanza. Why would men so mismanage their lives? Greed, he thought, was what ruined so many. Men commit themselves when but half meaning to do so, sacrificing possible future fullness of ecstasy to the craving for immediate excitement. Greed, mortgaging the future, forcing the hand of time or of fate.
What do you think happened?
I suppose long engaged people are like that, warm now, cool tomorrow. I think they are oftener cool than warm. The very fact that an engagement has been allowed to prolong itself argues certain placidity of temperament or of affection on the part of either or both.
Don Julian loved to philosophize. He was talking now with an evident relish in words, his resonant, very nasal voice toned down to monologue pitch.
That phase you were speaking of is natural enough for a beginning. Besides, that, as I see it, was Alfredo's last race with skipping youth. A last spurt of hot blood.
Few certainly would credit Alfredo Salazar with hot blood. Even his friends had amusedly diagnosed his blood as cool and thin, citing incontrovertible evidence. Tall and slender, he moved with an indolent ease that verged on grace. Under straight recalcitrant hair, a thin face with a satisfying breadth of forehead. Slow, dreamer's eyes, an astonishing freshness of lips. Indeed, Alfredo Salazar's appearance betokened little of exuberant masculinity, rather a poet with wayward humor, a fastidious artist with keen, clear brain. He rose and quietly went out of the house. He lingered a moment on the stone steps, then went down the path shaded by immature acacias, through the little tarred gate which he left swinging back and forth, now opening, now closing, on the gravel road bordered along the farther side by muddy cacao hedge in tardy lavender bloom. The gravel road narrowed as it slanted up to the house on the hill, whose wide, open porches he could glimpse through the heat-shriveled tamarinds in the Martinez yard. 6 weeks ago, that house meant nothing to him, save that it was the Martinez house, rented and occupied by Judge Del Valle and his family. 6 weeks ago, Julia Salas meant nothing to him. He did not even know her name. But now, one evening, he had gone neighboring with Don Julian, a rare enough occurrence, since he made it a point to avoid all appearance of currying favor with the judge. This particular evening, however, he had allowed himself to be persuaded.
A little mental relaxation now and then is beneficial. Besides, a judge's goodwill, is worth a rising young lawyer's trouble.
A young woman had met them at the door. It was evident from the excitement of the judge's children that she was a recent and very welcome arrival. In the characteristic Filipino way, formal introductions had been omitted, the judge limiting himself to a casual.
Ah, yes, si, Konusin?
With the consequence that Alfredo called her Miss Del Valle throughout the evening. He was puzzled that she should smile with evident delight every time he addressed her thus. Later, Don Julian informed him that she was not the judge's sister, as he had supposed, but his sister-in-law, and that her name was Julia Salas. A very dignified, rather austere name, he thought. Still, the young lady should have corrected him. As it was, he was greatly embarrassed, and felt that he should explain.
Oh, that is nothing. Each time I was about to correct you, but I remembered a similar experience I had once before.
Oh,
A man named Manalang. I kept calling him Manalo. After the 10th time or so, the young man rose from his seat and said suddenly, "Pardon me, but my name is Manalang. Manalang." I never forgave him. The best thing to do under the circumstances, I have found out, is to pretend not to hear and to let the other person find out his mistake without help.
as you did this time. Still, You looked amused every time
I was thinking about Mr. Manalang.
Don Julian and his uncommunicative friend, the judge, were absorbed in a game of chess, while Alfredo and Julia Salas had gone off to chat in the vine-covered porch. The lone piano in the neighborhood alternately tinkled and banged away as the players' moods altered. He listened and wondered irrelevantly if Miss Salas could sing. She had such a charming speaking voice. He was mildly surprised to note from her appearance that she was unmistakably a sister of the judge's wife, although Doña Adela was of a different type altogether. She was small and plump, with wide brown eyes, clearly defined eyebrows, and delicately modeled hips. A pretty woman with the complexion of a baby and the expression of a likable cow. Julia was taller, not so obviously pretty. She had the same eyebrows and lips, but she was much darker, of a smooth, rich brown with underlying tones of crimson, which heightened the impression she gave of abounding vitality. On Sunday mornings after Mass, father and son would go crunching up the gravel road to the house on the hill. The judge's wife invariably offered them beer, which Don Julian enjoyed and Alfredo did not. After a half hour or so, the chessboard would be brought out. Then Alfredo and Julia Salas would go out to the porch to chat. She sat in the low hammock and he in a rocking chair. And the hours, warm, quiet March hours, sped by. He enjoyed talking with her, and it was evident that she liked his company. Yet what feeling there was between them was so undisturbed that it seemed a matter of course. Only when Esperanza chanced to ask him indirectly about those visits did some uneasiness creep into his thoughts of the girl next door.
Did you go home straight after Mass?
Alfredo suddenly realized that for several Sundays now he had not waited for Esperanza to come out of the church as he had been wont to do. He had been eager to go neighboring. He answered that he went home to work, and because he was not habitually untruthful, he added,
Sometimes I go with Papa to Judge de Vallis.
She dropped the topic. Esperanza was not prone to indulge in unprovoked jealousies. She was a believer in the regenerative virtue of institutions, in their power to regulate feeling as well as conduct. If a man were married, why, of course, he loved his wife. If he were engaged, he could not possibly love another woman. That half-lie told him what he had not admittedly openly to himself, that he was giving Julia Salas something which he was not free to give. He realized that, yet something that would not be denied beckoned imperiously, and he followed on. It was so easy to forget up there, away from the prying eyes of the world, so easy and so poignantly sweet. The beloved woman, he standing close to her, the shadows around, enfolding.
Up here, I find something.
Amusement?
No, youth, it's spirit
Are you so old?
and heart's desire. Down there, the road is too broad, too trodden by feet, too barren of mystery.
Mystery, that is so brief.
Not in some, not in you.
You have known me a few weeks, so the mystery.
I could study you all my life and still not find it.
So long?
I should like to.
Those 6 weeks were now so swift, seeming in the memory, yet had they been so deep in the living, so charged with compelling power and sweetness, because neither the past nor the future had relevance or meaning. He lived only the present, day by day, lived it intensely, with such a willful shutting out of fact as astounded him in his calmer moments. Just before Holy Week, Don Julian invited the judge and his family to spend Sunday afternoon at Tanda, where he had a coconut plantation and a house on the beach. Carmen also came with her 4 energetic children. She and Doña Adela spent most of the time indoors, directing the preparation of the merienda and discussing the likable absurdities of their husbands. How Carmen's Vicente was so absorbed in his farms that he wouldn't even take time off to accompany her on this visit to her father. How Doña Adela's Dionisio was the most absent-minded of men, sometimes going out without his collar or with unmatched socks. After the merienda, Don Julian sauntered off with the judge to show him what a thriving young coconut looked like. Plenty of leaves, close set, rich green. While the children, convoyed by Julia Salas, found an ending entertainment in the rippling sand left by the ebbing tide, they were far down, walking at the edge of the water, indistinctly outlined against the gray of the outcurving beach. Alfredo left his perch on the bamboo ladder of the house and followed. Here were her footsteps, narrow, arched. He laughed at himself for his black canvas footwear, which he removed forthwith and tossed high up on dry sand. When he came up, she flushed, then smiled with frank pleasure.
I hope you are enjoying this.
Very much. It looks like home to me, except that we don't have such a lovely beach.
There was a breeze from the water. It blew the hair away from her forehead and whipped the tucked-up skirt around her straight, slender figure. In the picture was something of eager freedom, as of wings poised in flight. The girl had grace, distinction. Her face was not notably pretty, yet she had a tantalizing charm, all the more compelling because it was an inner quality, an achievement of the spirit. The lure was there, of naturalness, of an alert vitality of mind and body, of a thoughtful, sunny temper, and of a piquant perverseness, which is sauce to charm.
The afternoon has seemed very short, hasn't it? This, I think, is the last time we can visit.
The last? Why?
Oh, you will be too busy, perhaps.
Do I seem specially industrious to you?
If you are, you never look it. Not perspiring or breathless as a busy man ought to be.
But
Always unhurried, too unhurried and calm.
I wish that were true. A man is happier if he is, as you say, calm and placid.
Like a carabao in a mud pool.
Who? I?
Oh, no!
You said I am calm and placid.
That is what I think.
I used to think so too. Shows how little we know ourselves.
It was strange to him that he could be wooing thus, with tone and look and covert phrase.
I should like to see your hometown.
There is nothing to see. Little crooked streets, beneath roofs with ferns growing on them, and sometimes bushes.
That was the background. It made her seem less detached, less unrelated, yet withal more distant, as if that background claimed her and excluded him.
Nothing. There is you.
Oh, me? But I am here.
I will not go, of course, until you are there.
Will you come? You'll find it dull. There isn't even one American there.
Well, Americans are rather essential to my entertainment.
We live in Calaluz, a little street with trees.
Could I find that?
If you don't ask for Miss Del Valle.
I'll inquire about
What?
the house of the prettiest girl in the town.
There is where you will lose your way. Now, that is not quite sincere.
It is
I thought you, at least, would not say such things.
pretty, a foolish word, but there is none other more handy I did not mean that quite.
Are you withdrawing the compliment?
Reinforcing it, maybe. Something's pretty when it pleases the eye. It is more than that when...
If it saddens,
Exactly.
it must be ugly.
Always?
Toward the west, the sunlight lay on the dimming waters in a broad, glinting streamer of crimsoned gold.
No, of course you are right.
Why did you say this is the last time?
I am going home.
When?
Tomorrow. I received a letter from father and mother yesterday. They want me to spend Holy Week at home. That is why I said this is the last time.
Can't I come to say goodbye?
Oh no, you don't need to.
No, but I want to.
There is no time.
The golden streamer was withdrawing, shortening, until it looked no more than a pool far away at the rim of the world. Stillness, a vibrant quiet that affects the senses as does solemn harmony. A peace that is not contentment, but a cessation of tumult, when all violence of feeling tones down to the wistful serenity of regret. She turned and looked into his face, in her dark eyes a ghost of sunset sadness.
Home seems so far from here. This is almost like another life.
I know. This is elsewhere, and it's strange enough. I cannot get rid of the old things.
Old things?
Oh, old things. Mistakes, encumbrances, old baggage.
He said it lightly, unwilling to mar the hour. He walked close, his hand sometimes touching hers for one whirling second. Don Julian's nasal summons came to them on the wind. Alfredo gripped the soft hand so near his own. At his touch, the girl turned her face away, but he heard her voice say very low, "Goodbye." Alfredo Salazar turned to the right, where farther on the road broadened and entered the heart of the town, heart of Chinese stores, sheltered under low-hung roofs, of indolent drugstores and tailor shops, of dingy shoe-repairing establishments, and the cluttered goldsmith's cubbyhole where a consumptive bent over a magnifying lens. Heart of old brick-roofed houses with quaint cannonball knockers on the door. Heart of grass-grown plaza reposeful with trees, of ancient church and convento, now circled by swallows gliding in flight, as smooth and soft as the afternoon itself. Into the quickly deepening twilight, the voice of the biggest of the church bells kept ringing its insistent summons. Flocking came the devout with their long wax candles, young women in vivid apparel, for this was Holy Thursday and the Lord was still alive. Older women in sober black skirts. Came too the young men in droves, elbowing each other under the talisay tree near the church door. The gaily decked rice paper lanterns were again on display, while from the windows of the older houses hung colored glass globes, heirlooms from a day when grass pith wicks floating in coconut oil were the chief lighting device. Soon a double row of lights emerged from the church and uncoiled down the length of the street like a huge jeweled band studded with glittering clusters where the saints' platforms were. Above the measured music rose the untutored voices of the choir, steeped in incense and the acrid fumes of burning wax. The sight of Esperanza and her mother, sedately pacing behind Our Lady of Sorrows, suddenly destroyed the illusion of continuity and broke up those lines of light into component individuals. Esperanza stiffened self-consciously, tried to look unaware, and could not. The line moved on. Suddenly, Alfredo's slow blood began to beat violently, irregularly. A girl was coming down the line, a girl that was striking and vividly alive, the woman that could cause violent commotion in his heart, yet had no place in the completed ordering of his life. Her glance of abstracted devotion fell on him and came to a brief stop. The line kept moving on, wending its circuitous route away from the church and then back again, where, according to the old proverb, all processions end. At last, Our Lady of Sorrows entered the church, and with her the priest and the choir, whose voices now echoed from the arched ceiling. The bells rang the close of the procession. A round orange moon, huge as a winnowing basket, rose lazily into a clear sky, whitening the iron roofs and dimming the lanterns at the windows. Along the still, densely shadowed streets, the young women with their rare guard of males loitered and, maybe, took the longest way home. Toward the end of the row of Chinese stores, he caught up with Julia Salas. The crowd had dispersed into the side streets, leaving Cagliaria to those who lived farther out. It was past 8, and Esperanza would be expecting him in a little while. Yet the thought didn't hurry him, as he said,
Good evening. I had been thinking all this time that you had gone.
No, my sister asked me to stay until they are ready to go.
Oh, is the judge going?
Yes.
The provincial docket had been cleared, and Judge Del Valle had been assigned elsewhere. As lawyer and as lover, Alfredo had found that out long before.
Mr. Salazar, I wish to congratulate you.
Her tone told him that she had learned at last. That was inevitable.
For what?
For your approaching wedding.
Some explanation was due her, surely. Yet what could he say that would not offend?
I should have offered congratulations long before, but you know, mere visitors are slow about getting the news.
He listened not so much to what she said as to the nuances in her voice. He heard nothing to enlighten him, except that she had reverted to the formal tones of early acquaintance. No revelation there, simply the old voice, cool, almost detached from personality, flexible and vibrant, suggesting potentialities of song.
Are weddings interesting to you?
When they are of friends, yes.
Would you come if I asked you?
When is it going to be?
May?
May is a month of happiness, they say.
They say. Would you come?
Why not?
No reason. I am just asking. Then you will.
If you will ask me,
Then I ask you.
then I will be there.
The gravel road lay before them. At the road's end, the lighted windows of the house on the hill. There swept over the spirit of Alfredo Salazar a longing so keen that it was pain, a wish that house were his, that all the bewilderments of the present were not, and that this woman by his side were his long-wedded wife, returning with him to the peace of home.
Julita, did you ever have to choose between something you wanted to do and something you had to do?
No.
I thought maybe you had had that experience, then you could understand a man who was in such a situation. You are fortunate.
Is this man sure of what he should do?
I don't know, Julita. Perhaps not. But there is a point where a thing escapes us and rushes downward of its own weight, dragging us along. Then it is foolish to ask whether one will or will not, because it no longer depends on him.
But then why? What do I know? That is his problem after all.
Doesn't it interest you?
Why must it? I have to say goodbye, Mr. Salazar. We are at the house.
Without lifting her eyes, she quickly turned and walked away. Had the final word been said? He wondered. It had. Yet a feeble flutter of hope trembled in his mind, though set against that hope were 3 years of engagement, a very near wedding, perfect understanding between the parents, his own conscience, and Esperanza herself, Esperanza waiting, Esperanza no longer young, Esperanza the efficient, the literal-minded, the intensely acquisitive. He looked attentively at her where she sat on the sofa, appraisingly, and with a kind of aversion which he tried to control. She was one of those fortunate women who have the gift of uniformly acceptable appearance. She never surprised one with unexpected homeliness, nor with startling reserves of beauty. At home, in church, on the street, she was always herself, a woman past first bloom, light and clear of complexion, spare of arms and of breast, with a slight convexity to thin throat, a woman dressed with self-conscious care, even elegance, a woman distinctly not average. She was pursuing an indignant relation about something or other, something about Calixta, their note-carrier. Alfredo perceived, so he merely half listened, understanding imperfectly.
Have you heard the news about Calixta?
Well, what of it?
She is not married to him. Besides, she should have thought of us. Nana practically brought her up. We never thought she would turn out bad.
You are very positive about her badness.
But do you approve?
Of what?
What she did?
No.
Well,
All I say is that it is not necessarily wicked.
why shouldn't it be? I did not know that your ideas were like that.
My ideas? The only test I wish to apply to conduct is the test of fairness. Am I injuring anybody? No. Then, I am justified in my conscience. I am right, living with a man to whom she has not married. Is that it? It may be wrong, and again, it may not.
She has injured us. She was ungrateful.
The trouble with you, Esperanza, is that you are...
Why do you get angry? I do not understand you at all. I think I know why you have been indifferent to me lately. I am not blind or deaf. I see and hear what perhaps some are trying to keep from me.
The blood surged into his very eyes, and his hearing sharpened to points of acute pain. What would she say next?
Why don't you speak out frankly before it's too late? You need not to think of me and of what people will say.
Alfredo was suffering as he could not remember ever having suffered before. What people will say? What will they not say? What don't they say when long engagements are broken almost on the eve of the wedding?
Yes, one tries to be fair, according to his lights. But it is hard. One would like to be fair to one's self first, but that is too easy. One does not dare.
What do you mean? Whatever my shortcomings, and no doubt there are many in your eyes, I have never gone out of my way, of my place, to find a man.
Did she mean by this irrelevant remark that he it was who had sought her? Or was it a covert attack on Julia Salas?
Esperanza, if you suppose
If you mean you want to take back your word, if you were tired of... Why don't you tell me you were tired of me?
The last word had been said. As Alfredo Salazar leaned against the boat rail to watch the evening settling over the lake, he wondered if Esperanza would attribute any significance to this trip of his. He was supposed to be in Santa Cruz, whither the case of the people of the Philippine Islands versus Belina et al. Had kept him, and there he would have been if Brigada Samui had not been so important to the defense. He had to find the elusive old woman, that the search was leading him to that particular lake town which was Julia Salas' home should not disturb him unduly. Yet he was disturbed to a degree utterly out of proportion to the prosaicalness of his errand. That inner tumult was no surprise to him. In the last 8 years, he had become used to such occasional storms. He had long realized that he could not forget Julia Salas. Still, he had tried to be content and not to remember too much. The climber of mountains who has known the backbreak, the lonesomeness, and the chill finds a certain restfulness in level paths made easy to his feet. He looks up sometimes from the valley where settles the dusk of evening, but he knows he must not heed the radiant beckoning. Maybe, in time, he would cease even to look up. He was not unhappy in his marriage. He felt no rebellion, only the calm of capitulation to what he recognized as irresistible forces of circumstance and of character. His life had simply ordered itself. No more struggles, no more stirring up of emotions that get a man nowhere. From his capacity of complete detachment, he derived a strange solace. The essential himself, the himself that had its being in the core of his thought, would, he reflected, always be free and alone. When claims encroached too insistently, as sometimes they did, he retreated into the inner fastness, and from that vantage he saw things and people around him as remote and alien, as incidents that did not matter. At such times did Esperanza feel baffled and helpless. He was gentle, even tender, but immeasurably far away, beyond her reach. Lights were springing into life on the shore. That was the town, a little uptilted town nestling in the dark greenness of the groves. A snub-crested belfry stood beside the ancient church. On the outskirts, the evening smudges glowed red through the sinuous mists of smoke that rose and lost themselves in the purple shadows of the hills. There was a young moon, which grew slowly luminous as the coral tints in the sky yielded to the darker blues of evening. The vessel approached the landing quietly, trailing a wake of long golden ripples on the dark water. Peculiar hill inflections came to his ears from the crowd assembled to meet the boat, slow, singing cadences characteristic of the Laguna Lakeshore speech. From where he stood, he could not distinguish faces, so he had no way of knowing whether the Presidente was there to meet him or not. Just then a voice shouted,
Is the abogado there? Abogado!
"What abogado?" someone irately asked. That must be the Presidente, he thought, and went down to the landing. It was a policeman, a tall, pockmarked individual. The Presidente had left with Brigida Samue, Tandang Binday, that noon for Santa Cruz. Senor Salazar's second letter had arrived late, but the wife had read it and said, "Go and meet the abogado and invite him to our house." Alfredo Salazar courteously declined the invitation. He would sleep on board since the boat would leave at 4 the next morning anyway. So the Presidente had received his first letter? Alfredo did not know, because that official had not sent an answer.
Yes,
The policeman replied,
but he could not write because we heard that Tandang Binday was in San Antonio, so we went there to find her.
"San Antonio was up in the hills. Good man, the Presidente. Alfredo must do something for him." It was not every day that one met with such willingness to help. 8 o'clock, lugubriously tolled from the bell tower, found the boat settled into a somnolent quiet. A cot had been brought out and spread for him, but it was too bare to be inviting at that hour. It was too early to sleep. He would walk around the town. His heart beat faster. as he picked his way to shore over the rafts made fast to sundry piles driven into the water. How peaceful the town was! Here and there a little tienda was still open, its dim light issuing forlornly through the single window which served as counter. An occasional couple sauntered by, the women's tonellas making scraping sounds. From a distance came the shrill voices of children playing games on the street. Tubigan perhaps, or hawk and chicken. The thought of Julia Salas in that quiet place filled him with a pitying sadness. How would life seem now if he had married Julia Salas? Had he meant anything to her? That unforgettable red and golden afternoon in early April haunted him with a sense of incompleteness as restless as other unlaid ghosts. She had not married. Why? Faithfulness, he reflected, was not a conscious effort at regretful memory. It was something unvolitional, maybe a recurrent awareness of irreplaceability. Irrelevant trifles, a cool wind on his forehead, faraway sounds as of voices in a dream, at times moved him to an oddly irresistible impulse to listen as to an insistent, unfinished prayer. A few inquiries led him to a certain little tree-ceilinged street where the young moon wove indistinct filigrees of fight and shadow. In the gardens, the cotton tree threw its angular shadow athwart the low stone wall, and in the cool, stilly midnight the cock's first call rose in tall, soaring jets of sound. Kalia Luz. Somehow or other, he had known that he would find her house because she would surely be sitting at the window. Where else? Before bedtime on a moonlit night? The house was low, and the light in the sala behind her threw her head into unmistakable relief. He sensed, rather than saw her start of vivid surprise.
Good evening.
Good evening. Oh, are you in town?
Oh, some little business.
Won't you come up?
He considered. His vague plans had not included this, but Julia Salas had left the window, calling to her mother as she did so. After a while, someone came downstairs with a lighted candle to open the door. At last, he was shaking her hand. She had not changed much, a little less slender, not so eagerly alive, yet something had gone. He missed it, sitting opposite her, looking thoughtfully into her fine dark eyes. She asked him about the hometown, about this and that, in a sober, somewhat meditative tone. He conversed with increasing ease, though with a growing wonder that he should be there at all. He could not take his eyes from her face. What had she lost? Or was the loss his? He felt an impersonal curiosity creeping into his gaze. The girl must have noticed, for her cheek darkened in a blush. Gently, was it experimentally? He pressed her hand at parting, but his own felt undisturbed and emotionless. He didn't feel anything anymore. Did she still care? The answer to the question hardly interested him. The young moon had set, and from the uninviting cot he could see one half of a star-studded sky. So that was all over. Why had he obstinately clung to that dream? So all these years? Since when? He had been seeing the light of dead stars, long extinguished, yet seemingly still in their appointed places in the heavens. An immense sadness as of loss invaded his spirit, a vast homesickness for some immutable refuge of the heart, far away, where faded gardens bloom again, and where live on in unchanging freshness the dear, dead loves of vanished youth. And there you have it, folks. You have just listened to the 1925 short story that gave birth to modern Philippine writing in English. Again, that was entitled Dead Stars by Paz and Benitez. What have you learned, or what are your reactions? Let us listen to this analysis from someone on the internet. He said that the story is infused with moral and intellectual approaches. It portrays a multitude of fights involving a human being based on conditions and relationships with other human entities. Characters like Alfredo, Julia, and etc. are battling not only against their chances, but also against their conditions, government, and personal responsibilities. To make matter worse, they are also involved in a battle against their own emotions and understanding. It was indeed a battle within themselves. They lacked a certainty of thought, sentiments for each other, and thus their actions like lies, ridicule, insult, etc. reflect their ambiguity and desperation. Eventually, Alfredo surrenders to the social expectations and does the moral good, even though he ends up building a loveless home with Esperanza, his first love. Dead stars symbolize things that are present but are left unspoken of. The love between Alfredo and Julia seemed to be real, but as time goes by, the love they had lost and fades like a dead star. So disillusionment, reminiscent of the past that does not exist anymore. No, not because of lost youth. He finds her to be different from that person he perceived her to be all these years, and he is disenchanted. The illusion he harbored all these years are nothing but dead stars, long dead but emits light that seems real for the distance it has to travel, light being seen even if the source has lost its own brightness or died. Esperanza's devotion to Alfredo also resembles love, but since she believes in the regenerative virtue of institution more than true love, it is safe to say that she is in the relationship because of moral obligation. So that is it. Thank you so much for listening. Till the next story, folks. Once again, this is Mimi Yu, your best buddy on air. Blasting off.
Are you experiencing a case of the Mondays? Do you suffer from a once-weekly outbreak of sore personality, whatever, swelling mood, or inflamed temper? Then, Marmite and toast for breakfast could be the pseudo-scientific remedy you're looking for. It's anecdotally proven to help families smash through the start of the week. To report a case of the Mondays, call the Marmite helpline on 800-832-1824. Hate Mondays? Love Marmite.
TYEL 113, your best buddy station in the session.